I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. As fights over workers' rights continue to rage in several states, we'll take a look at restoring the common good between employers, workers, and unions.
Roman Catholic social teaching, built upon philosophical and theological foundations, has used this framework of the common good to underscore the dignity of the human person.
Plus, bombs over Benghazi. As coalition forces continue operations in Libya, we get an update on the plight of refugees there. And it's March Madness of a different kind. Basketball teams from churches in Brooklyn and Queens face off.
And this is just a day that God has given us to relax and revel in what he's done for us. He woke us up today to play basketball.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Wisconsin may have been ground zero in labor disputes so far this year, but it is not the only place unions are fighting for their rights. Over in New Jersey, just across the Hudson River, a bill is making its way through the state legislature that would require all future public employees to live in the state or move to New Jersey within 1 year of being hired. Public employees living outside of New Jersey before the proposed law takes effect would be exempt. And that's just one of a number of instances around the country that are changing the landscape of organized labor. But are employers and their workers at a permanent impasse? Well, a recent forum at St. John's University in Queens looked for answers. Last week, St. John's School of Law hosted a conference that examined the theology of work and the dignity of workers. The conference wasted no time digging into the issue with its first panel, a discussion on restoring the common good between employers, employees, and unions. So just how is the common good defined? Well, Father Patrick Flanagan, assistant professor of theology and religious studies at St. John's University, says the church's view is very specific.
The Roman Catholic's vision of the common good as expressed in its organic social tradition is a sum total of conditions that make life together a naturally occurring and desirable reality, and therefore allow individual members of society to fully achieve one's perfection.
At the heart of the issue, the recently passed law in Wisconsin, which would undermine the unions by significantly weakening collective bargaining rights.
If the dignity of work is to be protected, then the basic rights of the workers must be respected.
The controversy started with the Wisconsin budget repair bill proposed by Governor Scott Walker in answer to a $137 million budget shortfall. The bill addressed more than just collective bargaining rights. Pension costs and health care premiums would also take a hit. This move prompted tens of thousands of demonstrators to take to the streets all over the country in protest of the Wisconsin law, including union members, students, and concerned citizens. While acknowledging the issue is complex, Walker insists the goal is balancing the budget and that at the end of the day, the move will be a positive one.
Obviously, there's a lot of hard feelings, a lot of tension there, but I think every day we move forward, and the more we get talking about jobs, the better off we're going to be.
But Bernie Rickey, president of the United Auto Workers Local 600, argues that the governor is misleading people.
It's not about the budget deficit. The unions agreed to do what was necessary to eliminate the budget deficit. They were willing to make those cuts in these economic times. So it really was not about that. It was about collective bargaining rights, about having power, and about destroying unions.
What this governor is trying to do is deny basic rights of workers to have a voice at their job.
Judy Scott, an attorney with the Service Employees International Union, suggests that Governor Walker is staging a political coup.
He rammed the law through in basic violation of the citizens' rights to have an advance notice and the right to debate the bill.
But it's going to affect families too, because they're going to impose cuts and increase in health care premiums on families that are already struggling.
But Jerry Laracuda, president of CSEA Local 830, says that the public outcry that followed was born of the belief that the common good was violated and that further consequences lie ahead.
I think they crossed the line. They hit a nerve. They woke up middle-class America, and I think it's going to reflect in their poll numbers. And I think that in November we're going to see the result of these anti-labor, anti-middle-class, anti-American moves and tactics by these politicians.
But some people fear the decision in Wisconsin may have lit a fire that will be hard to stamp out.
And it's spreading to all these other Midwest states. It used to be a stronghold of unions, and some of it's worse than what's in Wisconsin. I think there's more danger maybe in Ohio than some of the stuff they're proposing there. In Michigan, they're proposing some things too.
A poignant question might be for us who are speaking about labor negotiations: does our activity or engagements enhance or threaten our life together as a community?
We built the middle class, we're under attack, and if we want to save the middle class, we need to promote unions and get back to where we were years ago.
And there still may be hope for the unions. On March 18th, a judge issued a stay on the law, preventing it from going into effect for now, after Dane County officials said legislators passed the bill without proper public notice, a violation of the state's open meetings law. Ms. Scott says she's confident the common good will triumph.
We're hopeful that it will be reversed and that justice for all will prevail.
Well, a very interesting and timely discussion there. Stay tuned, there's much more currents ahead. Is a ceasefire in Libya's immediate future? It's what the leader of that country's Catholics is calling for. We'll have that and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up in just a bit, March Madness comes to Queens. We'll find out who's got game. But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. Well, while the shelling continues in Libya, the leader of that country's Catholics is calling for a ceasefire. Bishop Giovanni Innocenzo Martinelli, the Apostolic Vicar of Tripoli, is asking why diplomatic means have not been considered. Martinelli spoke with the Vatican news agency Fides. Now, in other news today from Libya, a U.S. fighter plane crashed there after experiencing an equipment malfunction. Both crew members were able to eject before being brought safely out of the country. Well, turning now to Japan, the Catholic Church continues to aid the victims of the earthquake and tsunami. The website Asian News reporting that the diocese, which borders the Fukushima prefecture, has set up a special center to help people displaced because of radiation leaks. Meanwhile, parishes in the Tokyo Archdiocese have organized special collections of first aid items. The Vatican spokesman is weighing in on nuclear power. Meantime, Zenit news agency reporting Father Federico Lombardi made his remarks on Vatican television. Lombardi said the security of the plants and the safeguarding of radioactive material can never be absolute. His words come as officials in Japan are continuing to test food and water for radiation in areas surrounding the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant. Well, turning now to Spain, where close to 1,000 people attended a mass of reparation at a university in Madrid. That came just over a week after protesters stormed the altar of the school's Catholic chapel and shouted insults against the Catholic Church. In the March 10th incident, some of those protesters reportedly stripped from the waist up. A bishop who celebrated the massive reparation called the protests incomprehensible and hurtful to religious sensibilities. Well, a new report from Mexico says priests there are targets of violence. According to data released by the Mexico-based Catholic Media Center, around 162 Mexican priests received death threats last year. The report also shows that more than 1,000 priests were threatened with extortion and 2 priests were kidnapped and killed. Closer to home, New York City will face at least 2 lawsuits over the recently passed Bill 371. The measure, which Mayor Bloomberg signed into law last week, places new regulations on pro-life pregnancy centers. Among other things, the centers will be required to post signs indicating they do not provide abortion referrals or artificial contraception. The Alliance Defense Fund filed suit on behalf of 3 centers. Now, a separate suit is also expected from EMC Frontline Pregnancy Centers, which operates 12 centers throughout the city. Now, an update into another right-to-life battle. The 1-year-old boy known as Baby Joseph is hopefully breathing a little easier after being given a tracheotomy. Doctors in St. Louis performed the procedure on Monday. Joseph was moved into the U.S. after officials in his home country of Canada ruled that he was in a persistent vegetative state and had no chance of recovery and should be removed from life support. Well, from Chicago, a priest who is no stranger to controversy says he wants to remain at the Catholic parish he's led for over 25 years. Father Michael Flager says he was asked to leave St. Sabina's Catholic Church, a predominantly African-American parish in the southwest part of Chicago. Now, reports say Chicago Archbishop Cardinal Francis George has asked Flager to leave St. Sabina's and take over a nearby school. Back in 2008, Flieger apologized after mocking then presidential candidate Hillary Clinton during an appearance at Barack Obama's church. Just last year, Flieger was forced to apologize after he said that women should be allowed to become priests during a homily at his own church. And when it comes to book sales, B16 is in the top 10. The second volume of Pope Benedict's writings on the life of Christ has reached number 10 on the New York Times bestseller list. The new book, Jesus of Nazareth, From the Entrance into Jerusalem to the Resurrection, has been made available in 7 languages, totaling 1.2 million copies. Well, stay tuned. There's more currents ahead. Coming up, stuck at the border. We'll look at how the situation for refugees in Libya has changed since coalition bombing began. Welcome back. War does not solve anything. Those are the words of the Apostolic Vicar of Tripoli, Bishop Vincenzo Martinelli. That was following coalition bombing of Libya that got underway this past weekend. Martinelli tells the Vatican news agency Fides that, quote, "We need to cease shooting immediately and begin mediation straight away." He says that the church in Libya is working to help refugees, many of them migrant workers, get across the border to Tunisia, where humanitarian aid organizations are poised to help. The Bishop of Tunis says most of the workers there are from the Philippines and Bangladesh and just want to get back to their home countries. The situation is also urgent for migrants looking to escape the violence but are stranded at the country's border with Egypt. Now, according to Caritas, many of the migrant workers are having trouble even getting in touch with the governments of their home countries. And one organization that's been doing what it can to help is Caritas member organization, Catholic Relief Services. Joining me now to talk more about it is CRS's Egypt country representative, Jason Bellinger. Jason, thanks so much for taking some time out for us. We appreciate it very much.
You're very welcome, Matt. I'm glad to be able to speak to you and your listeners.
Well, of course, we talked not all that long ago about the situation there along the Libya-Egypt border. How has it changed now with this UN resolution and now military action in the region?
Since we last spoke, I would say that the situation has improved quite a bit. The last time I spoke to you, there were roughly 5,000 migrant workers stranded at the border. Now there are roughly 2,200 today. The majority of those are people from Chad, roughly 1,500 people, and the balance are comprised of 270 people that are persons of concern to the United Nations, the UNHCR, High Commissioner for Refugees. Those are a mix of Eritreans, Ethiopians, and people from Somalia. The balance of 430 people are from other third country nations. Sure. And as it stands right now, all of them are just simply in a holding pattern waiting to go home.
Sure.
Get their travel documents in order and get home.
Right, and these are mainly, as I mentioned in the setup here, mainly just migrant workers who are just looking to get back to their home countries?
Yes, they are all migrant workers. There's a very small number of families. There's probably, if I'm not mistaken right now, there's about 80 women and children that are at the Saloum land port right there on the border, but the majority of them are migrant men between the ages of 20 and 50 that are simply, they've left Libya, they've left the violence, and now they want to get back home.
Sure. And I guess the kind of the ongoing question for me when I think about the plight of refugees along the border, not only with Egypt, but also along the other border there with Tunisia and elsewhere throughout Libya, how do those two countries, Egypt and Tunisia specifically, handle an influx of people who are leaving Libya when these are areas that are pretty unstable themselves right now?
That's exactly correct, and it's a big issue right now. It's a cause for concern to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and other humanitarian actors as well, because there's a big push to make sure that Egypt and Tunisia are not taking the brunt of this burden and having to accept the refugee population that be spilling into their borders. But Egypt is tackling the issue by making sure that the migrant workers have their travel documents in order and get on chartered flights or on buses to get to Cairo and then back to their countries of origin.
You spoke about the UN there and the UN Refugee Agency. A spokesperson for that agency, Adrian Edwards, actually said today that providing humanitarian assistance under current circumstances obviously very challenging, as we're mentioning. Reported shortages of medical supplies, basic commodities in the eastern part of the country, with prices having increased dramatically. What is the situation with providing that humanitarian aid? Is it getting where it needs to be?
As far as getting inside of Libya, I'm not able to really say right now. The last time we spoke, there was a good amount of humanitarian aid that was going into eastern Libya. Subsequently, with the pro-Gaddafi attacks on Benghazi and other cities in the east, humanitarian aid has been reduced quite a bit because of the concerns regarding security. But yesterday, I've heard reports of Libyans going back inside Libya. There's a WHO, World Health Organization representative today at the border crossing who indicated that he's based in Benghazi in the east of Libya. He was witnessing internal movements of Libyans moving back to their home cities, but no real movement of people going to the Egyptian border. So I think people are kind of in a wait-and-see mode to see how things progress with the coalition attacks on Gaddafi and his forces.
Sure. Well, Jason Bellinger, the Egypt country representative with Catholic Relief Services, keep up the good work there, and all the best to you, and our thoughts and prayers go with you during this time and doing the very important work that you guys are doing over there. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Matt.
Well, stay tuned. There's much more Currents straight ahead. When we return, an answer to the age-old question, who's got game, Brooklyn or Queens?
Everybody kind of went crazy. Brooklyn's going to win, Queens going to win. It all comes down to who's the better team, and personally, I believe that would be the Queens team.
I don't really know the Queens team. I'm going to rep Brooklyn because I'm from Brooklyn, and I know the amount of ability that Brooklyn has.
Well, finally tonight, you know, the NCAA tournament has finally reached the Sweet 16. But if you cannot wait until the weekend to see the next round of March Madness, we've got some basketball that's much closer to home right here on Currents. But the teams that took part in this tournament did not include Duke, UConn, BYU, or Kansas. No, it was a matchup of Brooklyn and Queens. And the gathering, sponsored by the Vicariate of Black Catholic Concerns Youth Leadership Program, was about more than just basketball. Yeah, it was a chance for young people to come together to enjoy music, dancing, fellowship, and some friendly competition. We sent our cameras to St. Clair's in Rosedale, Queens to check it out.
Usually March Madness just means college basketball, but March Madness today specifically is just a day to like enjoy being in the ambassadors program, everybody come together, have fun, and just enjoy a day off. The ambassador program helped me like get ready for college and other stuff like that. It's a good leadership program as well as a religious program.
With the March Madness going on with college basketball, it was a great opportunity that was planned for the young people from Brooklyn and Queens. Earlier on, we had the liturgical dancers from St. Benedict the Moor, St. Bonaventure. We also had a youth leader from St. Bonaventure participate in the youth rally.
This whole event basically revolving around prayer, playing, and then fellowship. There's supposed to be 3 games, the Brooklyn Ambassadors versus the Queens Ambassadors, then the Brooklyn Parish versus Queens Parish, and then a championship game afterwards.
When they first brought up the idea, everyone in the group, because we have people from Brooklyn and Queens, everybody kind of went crazy. Brooklyn's going to win, Queens going to win. It all comes down to who's the better team, and personally, I believe that would be the Queens team.
I don't really know the Queens team, but I'm going to rep Brooklyn because I'm from Brooklyn, and I know the amount of ability that Brooklyn has.
Now we have the Queen versus the Ambassador group. I am playing on the Ambassador group, and I think we could come out on top with a lot of, you know, hard work and dedication.
The Queens Parish 68 and the Ambassadors 24.
I have to give it up to the Queens Parish group. They really came out and played. I think the Ambassadors actually put out a good point, you know, that not only that we do work outside of the community, we also can have fun.
Winning is the same thing as losing. So it's just involvement of having fun. Like, shouldn't go hard for a game.
We do things for God all the time, and this is just a day that God has given us to like relax and like revel in what He's done for us. He woke us up today to play basketball and eat food and watch amazing performances. So all in all, without Him, this couldn't be possible.
I've got to admit something. I love playing basketball, but I'm really pretty bad at it. So I have to, anybody that's even halfway decent at basketball, major props. Great job and a lot of fun there. It's great, all the things that happen in the Brooklyn Diocese. Well, that is all for this edition of Currents. Now make sure and join us tomorrow as we explore the next major battleground of war, clean water. Until then, though, be sure to check us out online at currentsny.net. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good night.